Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're going to be journeying into the world of myth and magic with today's game, Dragon Spell. Released in 1992 by Spears Games, this is a game for 2 to 4 players aged 4 and up. Now this is a game for younger players, so the box art features characters which are going to appeal to younger children. But I really do like the artwork on this. There's a really nice fantasy theme. I really like the Dragon Spell font that they've used here and this kind of scrolling background that they've got here on the game's tagline. Journey into the magical land of dragons and elves in this spellbinding action game. Kind of says it all there. It's got mystery and intrigue, and you're going to want to find out what this game is really about. And to do that, we're going to take a look at the back, and you can see here we've got a nice big studio photograph of the game. We've got the contents list, a couple of close-up images with captions, and the story of the game. Once upon a time and far away there lived a mighty green dragon, and he wore on his head a gleaming golden crown that he had stolen from the king of the elves. So the king sent his favourite elves to the mountain and promised that he would give half his kingdom to the one that brought back the crown. But beware, he warned, for the dragon has magic powers and will try to cast a spell on you. And the dragon and its magic powers are the real selling point in this game. It's a really nice mechanism that's really unique. Let's have a closer look. Since this is Dragon Spell, the game comes with a dragon, and he's a rather happy looking chap here. He's got this big smile on his face. Not sure that's something that a dragon would have, really, if it was suspecting gnomes from stealing its treasure. I think I really would have liked this dragon to be a bit fiercer looking rather than this, but overall it's quite a nice sculpt. He's got his large base here, which actually has got a magnet inside of it, and his head looks a little bit odd with this lump on top of it. Looks like he's had something land on top of him and give him a bit of a nasty bump, but this is actually so that you can attach his crown onto his head. We've got a throne, and this is for the end point of the game. This is where you are trying to get to. There are 4 coloured elves as playing pieces, and I have to say, these guys really do creep me out. I mean, there is something unintentionally freaky about these elves. I mean, look at this horrendous rictus grin. It's like a skull with these bared teeth here, and these dead zombie-like eyes. I do not like these guys. They are rather creepy, and I think they can stay locked in their box when I am not playing this game and it's in the attic. These guys, not only is there one level of creepiness, there is even more because it gets smaller, like a Russian doll. There is a smaller size, and this guy is just as bad or even worse. Look at the eyes on this guy, staring, zombie, undead eyes. Who came up with the idea for the sculpt on this face? I don't know. It's not a great idea. And look, for some reason he has got a great big butt crack as well. So there we go, more reasons to be scared. And this guy gets even smaller. This one, thankfully, is not, well, actually, I say he's not so creepy, but look at that face. He actually looks a lot like a possessed ventriloquist dummy. And, yep, quite safe that I do not like him either. You can see here that they all get smaller, and they've all got this little dimple on top of their head, which for these guys rather than dragon makes more sense because it's a bit like a hat. But again, that is so that the crown can go on top of them. And again, they've got a large base which has a magnet in it. Now, depending on which size playing piece you're playing with in the game, more on that later, you will have a different size dice. So the biggest playing piece will play with the largest size dice. The medium-sized playing piece will play with the medium-sized dice. And the smallest sized playing piece will play with this itty bitty little teeny dice here. This dice goes up as high as 6, this one goes as high as 5, and this one goes as high as 4. And each dice features 2 dragon tail symbols on them, and these will be used in order to cast the dragon's spell. And the final component is the game board, and this thing is pretty huge. I really like this. The sculpting on this, the nice theming of this as a mountain with valleys that you actually go down into, and it's all 3D molded. This is really nice. The elves gather high in the mountain on their coloured spots, ready to begin their quest to retrieve the crown from the dragon. Setting off, each elf must descend down into the valley to take on the scaly thief. Once in possession of the crown, they then have to escape back up the sides of the mountain, ascending to the throne. The first person to get to the throne with the crown on is the winner. But of course, dragons are jealous beasts, and this one is not about to give up its treasure quite so easily. And not only is it mythical, this dragon is magical. Given the chance, the dragon will fly around the valley casting a spell, and if that spell is successful, it might just shrink one of the elves. And if you're shrunk enough times, you're going to have to go back to the start to recover. Well, as much as I would love this game to actually be magical, sadly it's not. So what other marvellous mechanisms are actually in play here? As with most children's games of this era, players use the dice and roll it to see how many spaces they move. So let's go for red has got 3 here, so they are going to move 1, 2, 3 spaces. Players then continue rolling the dice and moving the number of spots that they get on the dice, descending down into the valley along these black dots, eventually getting to this black and white space here where they can try to steal the crown. It doesn't matter if you roll a higher number than this, you will always stop here on this black and white space. When you actually steal the crown from the dragon, you've then got to try and escape back up the side of the mountain to the throne. But your job is going to be made a lot harder because the crown is magic, and the magical crown will reduce your strength, and that means you can't move as far. Now the way that that works is because this character here is a full-size elf, so they would normally be on the dice, which goes as high as 6. However, once you've got the crown on, you've then got to go to the smallest die, which only goes up as high as 4. And so potentially you're going to be on this white track ascending the mountain for longer than if you were rolling the die which goes as high as 6. And so you're going to be in danger of the dragon casting a spell on you for much longer. And how does the dragon cast a spell? Well, all 3 of the die feature a dragon tail on 2 sides. And if you roll a dragon tail, then the dragon casts its spell. In order for the dragon to cast his spell at any point during the game, he's placed on this green outer circle here and rotated around while saying his magic incantation. Round and round the dragon goes, who will shrink nobody knows. Round and round he casts his spell, who will shrink no one can tell. Once the dragon's made at least one loop around the board, he's then placed back into the centre and pressed down to cast his spell. Sometimes his magic spell will affect one of the elves on the board, and if they are affected, they will have to shrink. But it does not always happen. Having just cast this magic spell again, let's see what happens this time. And you could see there, that time, both of these elves were affected by the dragon's magic. So this elf here, who was affected, he is going to have to shrink down. And this elf here is also going to have to shrink down. Even though he shrinks, he does get to keep the crown though. This elf who's affected by the spell is going to have to go from using the large dice, which features a 6 on it, to the medium-sized dice, which only goes as high as 5. This elf over here, though, was already wearing the crown, and so because of that, they're already on the smallest dice that they can possibly use. These guys who were unaffected, they still get to use the large dice, which goes up to 6. If you get affected by the dragon spell and you're already medium sized, then you shrink even smaller. This guy has already got the crown though, so he is already on the smallest dice. If he didn't have the crown though, he would need to move on to the smallest dice to coincide with his smallest size. Anybody caught by the dragon spell shrinks, so this player is going down even smaller, and this player, because they are the smallest size they can already be, they have shrunk down so far that they are going to have to go back to the start and begin again. Of course, when they begin again, they get to grow back to their full size and start again using the full size dice, which goes up to 6. The crown that they did have gets dropped where they were, and then the next player on their go can stop on that space and take the crown for themselves. The dragon isn't the only one you need to watch out for though on this perilous journey. All of the elves are out for themselves. So if somebody rolls a dice, which means that they get to actually move past you, if you've got the crown, they're going to end up stealing it from you on their way to the throne to become the winner. Now, as much as I love magic, the real interest for me lies in the engineering. What mechanisms or gimmicks were employed to create that illusion? So we're going to take this apart and see exactly what is going on here. So at this point, I've already unscrewed the 6 screws on the bottom. And I'm going to carefully lift this up to see what's inside. And we can see here, this is what's going on. It's a pretty simple, straightforward mechanism here, so that we have basically got a spindle on which we have got a rotating magnetic platform. Obviously, when we lower the dragon down and push the dragon around, we are pushing this platform around using magnetism underneath the mountain. And that, of course, is spinning this base, which has these magnets on here. And these magnets repel against the bottom of the playing pieces here. So when the dragon is put back in the centre, having been spun around in order to randomise this and mix it up, there is a flipper mechanism here in the bottom, so that when the dragon is pushed down, it pulls this section here upwards, which connects these closer to the base where the elves might be, and that will push them and repel them with magnetism so that they fall over. You can see if I hold the mountain upside down at a slight angle and hold this piece in place here, this will spin quite freely, and the dragon here with the magnet on the top will repel these spring-loaded pieces here. And so if I put that on the track and move it around, that will move them around quite nicely just with the magnets there. And then when the dragon is actually pressed down into the center here, you can see that that pulls it from wherever it is into position. So it doesn't matter where it is, as soon as you push the dragon down, that will pull the mechanism up, and those magnets will repel the elves and make them fall over, being affected by the spell. This is definitely a game for younger children, but it's got everything I love in a game. It's got beautiful painted box artwork. It's got a big 3-dimensional game board. It's got sculpted plastic playing pieces, and it's got a really innovative game mechanism which incorporates engineering and science. So for me, it's ticking a lot of boxes here. If I was going to look for something to improve on this game, it would be that I think it needs more spaces on the board. If you're playing a 4-player game, it does get particularly crowded on there, and you can only have one playing piece on a spot at a time. So I really think that they should have perhaps put more spots on the game board. With the big gaps between those spaces, they could have pretty much doubled it and had one extra space in between all of the spaces that there are there. And I think by having extra spaces, it would make the game last longer, and it would also mean that you're in danger more, and that game mechanism is going to come into play a lot more often. The mechanism itself is really, really nice. It's got really nice randomness to it, and it is going to be wholly unpredictable. The only thing that I'm not too sure on is the fact that that green ring on the top has been painted. And because you are dragging a dragon around on top of it, you're going to end up scuffing that green paint over time. So perhaps that would have been better left unpainted. The sculpts on the playing pieces are also a little on the strange and slightly simplistic side. So that could have been improved a little bit. Another thing is that when you're actually taking off one layer of the playing piece in order to reveal a slightly smaller gnome which has been shrunk, then sometimes those get stuck and you end up lifting more than one layer off at a time. And occasionally you need to even get a pair of pliers in order to pull them apart, which is a definite drawback. But overall, from a design point of view, I really, really do like this game. It is one which is not very common at all, and when you do find it, it's going to be around about £15 to £20. That is, of course, if you're paying eBay prices rather than finding it in a thrift shop or a charity shop. If you can find it though, it's a definite recommendation from me, because who doesn't need a little magic in their lives? Until next time, this is Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.